Today I'm going over how to quickly thread your Juki DDL 8700. So this is an oil bath type single needle lock stitch machine. It's not a walking foot, but let's get it threaded up. And you would think that that would start somewhere at the top of the machine, but it doesn't, at least not for me. Threading starts with the needle. And links to this machine as well as some of my favorite industrial sewing machine accessories will be down in the description box. This one's a straight DDL 8700 and there's tons of sub-variants on this one, so be sure to double check with your specific manual. And the reason I say that is you don't want to get your machine all nicely threaded up only to realize you're using the wrong needle system, which for this one is a DB×1. That's good for needle sizes 9 up through 18. But if you find yourself wanting to use a larger needle, you can actually get by with a DL×1. And that's good for sizes larger than 18, so 19, 20, so on and so forth. And that actually fits this machine as well. But the other thing that's really important to do is to pair the needle size with the thread weight that you're using. And you can just pause on this chart if you want to check it out a little further. But typically you might think of using a size 14 needle with a 46 weight thread. And something a little bigger, maybe like an 18 size needle with a 69 weight thread. And if you stick around till the end, I'll even show you my neat trick for how to visualize your upper thread path with contrasting thread. With the proper needle installed in your machine, you can go ahead and wind a bobbin. With any industrial sewing machine, it's important to use thread that unspools off the top like this, unlike a home sewing machine where the whole spool would tend to rotate. If you have a separate spool of thread for your bobbin, that typically goes on this side, and I highly recommend these thread nets. They're excellent just to prevent tangles and any problems as you sew. To wind up the bobbin, start by threading things through the thread stand. That'll come through this little eyelet here. Come through this eyelet and around the back of the tension assembly on the bobbin winder. Pass the thread through a hole in the bobbin from inside to out, and go ahead and engage the bobbin winder. If you're not going to be sewing while winding a bobbin, raise the presser foot and make sure that the machine's not threaded. Hold your thread a bit as you begin to wind. Then you can trim that excess thread. And if you want a little more thread left on your bobbin, here's the adjustment screw for that. Just turn that screw a little bit clockwise. Hold your bobbin like this so it unspools clockwise. And drop it into the bobbin case, just like this. Come back through that anti-backlash slot and under this little tension tab, just like that. Then you want to make sure your tension's good. It should feel just kind of like a spool of floss. And if you need a little more tension, it's this larger screw with a little ring around it. So clockwise for more bobbin tension. Now the DDL actually has lots of room to install your bobbin with the machine in the standard position, but until you get used to it, you might want to tip your head back. Move the hand wheel till the take-up arm is in the top position. Leave a few inches of thread hanging down, and this bobbin case tab should point towards you when the head's in the normal position, and it'll just snap right in place. Give the thread a pull to make sure you have smooth, consistent tension, and you're ready to thread the top side. For the upper thread, we'll use a contrasting color, and that will help us set tensions once we start sewing. Through the eyelet on your thread stand, as before. This DDL has a pre-tensioner on the thread post, and I think that confuses some people, but start by going from back to front on the lower hole, and then around over the top of that pre-tensioner. Then hit this 2-hole guide from right to left, come around like a barber pole, and once again, if you do yours slightly different, it's probably not going to matter. Then come straight down and between the tension discs, around and hook the check spring. You'll know you have it because the thread will act on the check spring. Come around this guide, and then you'll come up through this thread guide that needs to kind of hook in place from the side, and then on up towards the take-up arm. One more time, those same steps: tension disc, check spring, around this guide, inside this little loop guide, and straight up. Hit the take-up arm from right to left, and then you'll head right down towards this guide on the face of the machine. Hook around this S-shaped guide, and then don't forget to go through the needle bar thread guide. And just thread that from front to back. If you happen to miss this needle bar thread guide, the symptom can be shredding of the upper thread, so that's a really important one. Then thread the needle from left to right. And a couple of really important things on needle positioning. The long groove needs to be on the left side on this machine, where the little notch or the scarf needs to face the right, and the needle needs to be fully inserted upward into that needle bar. Hold your upper thread loosely as you roll the hand wheel towards you to pick up that bobbin thread. And we're ready to sew. Side loading machines like this one let you get away with a lot, but I always like to get in the habit of holding my threads back a little bit as I start. And we'll see how the tension looks. To terminate your stitching, roll the hand wheel towards you until it's at top dead center, and then forward a little bit further. That's a nice release point. Well, I didn't notice there's a little blue in this material, makes it hard to see, but I can tell the stitch looks pretty good on the top side. But on the bottom, it may be hard to see, but I can tell there's little blue dots of thread, so I'm actually seeing my upper thread on the bottom side of the work. And when that's the case, you simply need more upper tension, so turn this knob clockwise to adjust that. The other thing I'll do is increase the stitch length a little bit. Sometimes that makes it easier to identify the correct tension. Now this is 92/8 thread, and technically this machine isn't even supposed to be able to sew thread that thick, but you know, if you have the right needle in there, I've got the DL one, which takes a 20 size needle here and works just fine with this 92/8 thread. I'm still seeing a faint blue dot, so I'll increase the upper tension a bit more. And after a couple more adjustments like that, I'm just seeing the green on the bottom, so the tensions look really good. Double check that you're not seeing any bobbin thread on the top side. If that were the case, you just have to decrease your tension slightly, counterclockwise on that knob. Otherwise, if everything looks good, you're off to the races. Nice high lift on this 8700 as well, makes it really easy to get your work started. And as promised, here's my little trick for visualizing thread path where this yellow turns to blue thread. That's what you want to pay attention to. Around the pre-tensioner, barber poles around the upper guide, down through the main tension discs, guide, take up arm, and back down the face guides towards the needle. I always like that as a simple way to visualize the basic thread path. By the way, can you sew leather with this DDL machine? Yeah, it actually can. Now it's not going to sew through the thickest chunks of leather or the very dense leathers like veg tan, but if you have some thin upholstery weight leather and maybe just a couple layers, it does just fine. Looks pretty good actually. The feeding mechanism, of course, is more limited on the 8700. It just has drop feed. There's no needle feed on this machine, let alone walking foot, so it is remarkable how well it does despite those limitations. So if you just use this simple guide for threading up your Juki DDL 8700, you should have good luck with it. Do remember to use the right needle system though. That's a great place to start. And for this one, it's a DB times 1 or a DL times 1 is the system you want. But also remember to pair the needle size with the thread weight that you're using. That's so important for good results. But I will put this machine as well as some of my favorite accessories down in the description box if you want to check them out a little further.